Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CX Goalkeeper podcast. Your host, Greg, will have smart discussions with friends, experts, and thought leaders on customer experience, transformation, and leadership. Please follow this podcast on your preferred platform. I am sure you will enjoy the next episode with the guest I selected for you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CX Goalkeeper podcast. Today, I'm really thrilled to discuss with Spaul about getting things done right, strategy and practical tips. Today, it will be really practical tips, what we can really use, add and leverage during our projects, during what we are doing in our roles. But before we start, Michelle, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Greg?
You know, every time that I can record an episode with a great guest, I am super thrilled, super pumped, and therefore let's do that. Before we deep dive into the topic, we would like to learn more about you, today's top player, and therefore could you please introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Michelle Spaul. I'm an independent customer experience consultant. My first customer experience project was in 1992. And although I took a break from explicitly working in customer experience until maybe 5 years ago, I've been working with customer-facing staff to ensure the communication of customer needs travels into organizations and action is taken. So my very first project was what we now call Voice of the Customer, understanding why customers were unhappy with the product. It's quite a specific voice of the customer, and then encouraging people to take action. So my background is very practical. It's very action oriented. And I think it combines both data and science with remembering that we are all humans. Our customers are humans, our employees are humans. And I think the thing we sometimes forget is we CX practitioners are humans too. So, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. And yes, we are all human. And I think it's something that it's extremely important to remember. And based on this introduction, your first few sentences, I'm really keen to ask the next questions. Which values drives your professional life?
I think integrity is really important to me. I was just talking with a colleague about being ghosted by potential prospects and how we would never, ever do that to another person. So I think there's integrity, but that wraps up with empathy and taking the time to see the world from somebody else's perspective, through somebody else's eyes, I think are probably the two biggest. But to be honest with you, it's a very flat pyramid of many values.
No, I think that's important. And for me, this question is really to get a bit better feeling. And I think integrity and empathy are really important to us as customer experience practitioners, as digital transformation practitioners. And therefore, it's really important. But now let's kick off the game. Getting things done right, strategies and practical tips. And you mentioned that already once. But how you define the balance between business, customer, and employees' needs?
I don't think it's about defining it. I think it's about doing it. I've mentioned in several forums that I'm not a big fan of customer centricity as a terminology. I think it has many downsides, not least the way impacts our relationship with our colleagues in our businesses. And I think it also leads a little bit to the behaviors we sometimes see where people don't want to think about business returns, don't want to think about ROI. So I'm not a big fan of that terminology at all. What I prefer to think about is, as you said, the balance between business, customer, and employee. I think those three factors are what makes a business successful, makes it successful for its stakeholders and its shareholders, makes it a good place to work, and ensures it delivers the needs of its customers, which leads to a sustainable business, if not sustainable business growth. The practical side of that, well, the first thing is think customer. I'm a big fan of the Amazon customer chair. I don't mind how people do it, but I think if every decision has a question in there, which is, what is the impact of the customer of this decision? Every design process has the question, what is the impact of this design decision on the customer? I think we would get a lot closer to meeting our customers' needs first time round. But I think there's also a really big aspect of risk, because we don't structure our risk very well in businesses. There are some industries that are really, really good at risk management. I've worked in several industries where safety is the primary consideration, and therefore we're good at risk management. I think other businesses sometimes seem to make a decision and then hope for the best. And and I'm trying to say this really carefully, because it is not a criticism.
No, but what you are saying, I can really understand that, because what I see is I fully agree. It's about employees, it's about customer, and it's about business, and finding the best integration, the best possible balance. But what I see from a business point of view is that when you are in business, then you are not thinking like a human being anymore, but you are thinking in a completely different way, and sometimes it's strange or really strange. Even if you have the best possible strategy and you do that in the C-suite with all these important guys and perhaps paid consultants doing that, and you have the perfect strategy, and then you go back to business, and then it's daily operations, and you completely forget that you have a strategy, that you want what you want to achieve, and you take decisions based. Perhaps it's a bit unpolite, but it's based on the different moods, based on the different personal preferences, and so on. And therefore, I can really understand what you're saying, and we are also feeling that in a lot of companies.
Absolutely. And you know what, when we're dealing with what life throws at us, what the economy throws at us, with things like COVID, with new technologies, with, I believe, more than half of the democratic world voted this year. So so many countries dealing with new governments and new ways of doing things. When we have all that thrown to us as business leaders, it's very easy to make a decision kind of off the cuff. So the two practical things are, I've started building this phrase. I'm not sure if it's going to land, but let's see, is stop, think and listen. It's based on the Green Cost Code in the UK for crossing the road. Stop, look and listen. I want to say stop, think and listen. So here we made a decision. Let's stop. Let's think. Let's listen to the voice of the business, the voice of the employee, the voice of the customer in regards to that decision. I think the second thing is, sometimes there is only one choice. I don't believe it's as often as we kid ourselves, but I think sometimes there is only one choice. And when that happens, again, we have to stop, think and listen. And then it's about, what are the risks of this decision? What are the consequences of this decision? And again, we stop, we think, and then we listen to our employees, we listen to our customers, we listen to our shareholders, we listen in more research-based ways. We say, how have other people done this? Where has it gone wrong? And we actually actively manage those risks. So the thing is, it gets really boring really quickly because it all comes down to risk management. I'd say let's make risk management a little bit more interesting, as well as recognizing how incredibly valuable it is to a business to stop the behaviors you just described.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's extremely important. Stop, think, and listen. This is not related to the children crossing the roads. They should follow the right rules. Therefore, to everybody, please pay attention. This is not our suggestion when you are crossing the road, but it's really when you are doing business and you want to do something. And I think that's extremely important, because with this opportunity, you can also start thinking about the future. And perhaps what strategies help balancing short-term gains with long-term vision?
Well, for me, that balance is automatically starting to shift the focus from the short term. But when we broaden a decision, when we broaden our outlook for a decision, we are automatically thinking about a different time scale, because the time scale of the decision what do we do now we've had to send all our employees out because of COVID? Automatically starts thinking about the decision about being longer term. But I think there's so much to be said for having a vision, and not one of those cheesy throwaway taglines that we see businesses spout, but a really good vision, a vision that describes the future we want and describes it from many different dimensions, describes what we want our customers to think, feel, and do, a North Star, but also describes what we want our employees to think, feel, and do, to describe our values in a business. I sometimes think values, I think it's broader than values, because I think it's about philosophy. And I read today, I was reading a paper written by somebody at the University of Derby, because I'm doing some work with them, and they express customer experience as a strategy and customer experience management as a philosophy. And then I was dashing to come in and have our conversation, and my head hasn't worked through that yet. But I'm really excited about this idea of a philosophy, which you might call customer experience principles, but it's what's the underpinning for our decision making. And I think when we have all those things in place, all those aspects of a vision, we can start to see that when we make a decision, we've got a checklist. Now, I don't mean let's have an Excel spreadsheet with a checklist on it, but we've got something we can test that decision against. And that decision could be prioritizing activities, prioritizing investments, or it could just be no, just about it, or it could be the design of a touch point or product or a service. But I think with those touch points and a well-designed intervention to help people use those touch points, to understand them and to apply them consistently, I think we're automatically thinking about the long term.
Oh, there are a lot of things that we can and we should unpack. What you are saying, for me, it's really key, because first of all, you mentioned the philosophy. That's something that I really like, because Shep Aiken said customer experience is not a department, or customer service is not a department. It's a mindset. And now we're going to the next steps, to really trying to understand and get this feeling out to live our life and how to work. And basically, what you're saying, you mentioned that, like a joke, that it's not a checklist, but there is one well-known sentence by Ronald Disney that is saying, for us, it's not so difficult to take decisions because we know our values. And if you know your values, then it's quite clear how you take some decision. And we are back to what we discussed earlier, that people take decisions, or leaders take decisions based on their gut feeling, instead of thinking in business and thinking about the value that they have. Perhaps were you already able to help support companies going really through this way of better understanding their values and then taking decisions based on their values?
One of my jobs at Rolls-Royce, was it's called business development manager, but it's not what people mean by business development these days, which is sales. It was business development in that I was responsible for ensuring our strategies were created to align and delivered as we intended. And although it's not directly customer experience, it does come back to that balance piece. And my role was quite interesting, because I think it was brilliant, but if you're a smaller organization, it probably sounds overwhelming. But my role was to always be in the up-down conversation. So Rolls-Royce would have a vision. This is where we're going. The engineering department, for example, would have a philosophy. This is the kind of technology we're developing. This is how we develop it. Same with operations, same with HR. People would have their philosophy that would come together to build a goal that would be deployed down, and people would write individual strategies, and it would be added back up. It would be bought off, and then everybody would get their personal objectives. Now, it sounds crazy and overwhelming. And for the 3 months every year where I was in the thick of it, it really, really was. But the thing it did was it gave everybody an objective where they could see how they were contributing to the overall goal. And for me, that is the most important thing we can give to our employees. And you know, we've I've been there as a respondent, I've been there as a reader of employee engagement surveys, and you get this bit that somebody says nobody communicates to us. And when you go and ask what that means, it means, where do I fit in? Why is this thing that I'm doing important? Why have I been asked to do it? And the structure that I described, we called it business plan deployment. That structure of being able to draw a line from every single person in the organization to its vision, to its goals, was phenomenal. And you know what? It always reminds me of the story of NASA, where John F. Kennedy went to visit Cape Canaveral, as it was then, and he met a lot of people, and he shook the hands of a janitor, and he said, "And what do you do?" And the janitor said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." That's the bit. That is the bit where we have to work out how to do that within our own organizations, with our own resources, according to our own culture, according to our philosophy. But if we know that every single person knows what they're doing and why they're doing it, everything becomes clearer. You might be able to tell, I actually really enjoyed that job. One of the things I got to do was create what we called the strategy room, where I worked with a graphic designer, and we created it was a series of wall charts, but they told the story of our strategy. And what I did was I trained the trainer. So we picked people from each department to teach. I took them through it. We asked lots of questions, lots of challenges. They helped with the design as well. And then they deployed it out to their teams. But then we had open sessions where people could speak to their managers about the strategy and pass feedback back. And I acted as a kind of plan B for people. So if somebody did mention something to their manager and if they felt it wasn't taken on board, they could mention it to me.
It's cool. So cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really, really did.
Now, I'm not asking you which car you're driving because it's quite clear. No, joke. Joke aside, Rolls-Royce is also really representing quality. And I think this is also one important topic to discuss with you. How can companies decide when to prioritize quality over just getting things done, as we were discussing earlier?
It comes back to finance. How much money have you got? If you can afford to do a job twice, go ahead, just get things done. If you want to do a job once, think about quality. And for me, because my background is from that quality world, for me, the definition of quality is multiple. Obviously, my background means safety is a huge part of quality. Reliability or consistency is a huge part of quality. Delivering functional needs is a huge part of quality, and for me is the core of customer experience. But also meeting our brand promise, which is not just the meeting the logo and so on, it's meeting the values, it's meeting the promise we make in our communications with our customers and stakeholders. And I think if we get those 4 aspects of quality right, we're going to make poor decisions from time to time because the world changes, but we'll make fewer, and we should do a lot less work twice. So I'm just going to repeat my answer to your question. How to prioritize quality over just doing things? Work out if you can afford to do it twice. Because if you can't, you need to use quality.
And linking what you are saying and what you shared, you define quality as the foundation, the basics that every company needs to manage in order to deliver products and services to their customer. And when we're speaking about customer experience, it's not about delighting or always delighting customer, but it's about offering a reliable, consistent experience. And for sure, the product, the service needs to deliver what are the expected functions. And there are a lot of experts in customer experience. Now popping to my mind again, Shep Icon, that is defining customer experience, or what to do is these amazing experiences, and he defines amazing like let's meet the basics, let's deliver everything what it's required, and be only a bit better, and then you are better than the average, and you can then offer this specific customer experience. It doesn't make sense like to get things done. You can delight once the customer, and the next time coming back you are not there, you cannot help him, and therefore this is extremely important. And from your point of view, we discussed that, but perhaps you have some practical tips that you can share. What is the best way to maintain these basics, offering these basics while exploring new trends? Because we need always to transform, to get better, to create new products and new services.
Well, before I answer that, I would like to come back to some of the things you mentioned around the whole delight and amaze and wow. I've been fortunate enough to do some work with Dr. Professor Phil Klaus, and he has a paper which is a meta study of many customer experience academic papers. And these are academic papers where the academic's gone into the real world and studied customer experience and defined it. And what the paper does, the meta paper, is it pulls together a definition of customer experience looking at 3 dimensions. And part of one of those dimensions is the idea of ordinariness. And I think for me, this is where a lot of customer experience falls foul and starts to get conflated with marketing, because we assume that customers want a relationship with us. We assume that we're important to customers. We assume that customers want wow. And the ordinariness scale, I always put going to the supermarket to buy a loaf of bread at the ordinary end. The case studies that we hear about, the amazing hotel brands, the theme parks, there is a wow there because customers want wow. But when you're buying a loaf of bread, do you know what? You want to be able to get there safely, park or have a dry walk from the bus stop, find the bread, have good choice, feel comfortable you're getting value, be able to pay, and be able to leave safely and dryly, and so on. And if wow helped in that journey, we would have brass bands and welcomers at our supermarkets. We don't. And the reason is they recognize that customers are not going to pay extra for wow because they don't want it. And in fact, wow could destroy the value that the customer's getting by delaying them. So when we ask doing the basics, I think there are basics, but I think the first step is to understand your customer's actual needs. I use the strategizer definition there. So I said functional needs to me are the foundation. Those are the jobs to be done, if you like. But we also have the psychological and the social needs. I see psychological sometimes described as emotional. I don't know if it's because I'm British, but there's a kind of emotional is not necessarily the right word there. But psychological is how we think about ourselves. Social is about how others see us. And I think if we start understanding our customers' needs overall, and then understand which aspects of our products, our services, and our touch points are ordinary or extraordinary, then we can start saying, this is where we have to get the basics right, and this is where we can build in wow. And I've not measured it. I've never seen any data on it, but I would be willing to bet you money that 99.9% of customer journeys are ordinary, because our customers are doing a job that they want to get done before they return to their lives away from our business. So if we think jobs to be done, psychological and social needs, we start to be able to work out what the basics are. And if you do have an ordinary role in somebody's life, then you can work out how to add additional value. So you can work out how to be a trusted advisor. an example might be going to buy paint. It's actually quite an ordinary job in the middle of a much more important job. So the job to be done is to decorate. The role of selling paint is minimal in that whole job to be done. But if we can help people outside that point by providing good paint samples, I've just got some little beautifully printed pieces of recyclable paper that are paint samples. You know, instead of having one of those little brushes and then painting and then not knowing what to do with it, I've got samples like that. They've added value way to a part of the journey that they have no involvement in. That to me is when we do wow. It's not when I go to the DIY shop and buy the paint. It's not when I open the lid of the paint and, you know, Jack in the Box brings it out and says, "Have a nice day." It's how can we make this job better for Michelle?
Yes.
That said, there are some basics, and that's where I think the quality comes in. If we think safety, reliability, functionality, and brand promise, if you don't keep those four things, no amount of wow in the world is going to get somebody to come back.
And I think with this sentence, we are coming to an end of this discussion. In the extra time, in the last 2-3 minutes, I still have 3 questions for you. Fast forward, in 10 years from now, we are back on the CX Goalkeeper podcast. What we're discussing about?
I've thought long and hard about this. One of the things there's a phrase in the UK which comes from America, which is, I've never predicted the future and I never will, which obviously is a prediction. So that amuses me. I actually think if we're lucky, we'll be discussing the same stuff, but at a higher level. We will have elevated our conversation. So we may still be discussing ordinary versus wow, but instead of it being a conversation where we feel the need to persuade people of that point of view, it could be a conversation about, 10 years is a long time, but it could be a conversation about what are those pieces of innovation that we can use to actually elevate the customer experience without compromising the basic customer needs. So it's a roundabout way of saying, I kind of hope we're having the same conversations, but at a high level.
Thank you. And what's the best way to contact you?
Oh, LinkedIn. The best way to learn more about me is through my website, customerexperienceconsultant.co.uk. I build it and manage it myself, so please be nice about it. But that's a really good way to find out more about what I do and can offer. There's a connection feature on there, but you can also get me through LinkedIn.
Thank you very much. And to the audience, you will find, as usual, all this information in the show notes. Now we're coming to the last question. Is Michelle's golden nugget? It's something that we discussed or something new to leave to the audience with?
Okay, so I've used this golden nugget in another area, but that was for an IT person. So I think I can safely repeat it for you. And that is, please stop putting on your customer's shoes. It's unhygienic, and the best it will tell you is about their feet. When you're thinking about your customers, it's really important to get into their hearts and minds. Thinking about their shoes is not going to get us there. We have to be more structured. We have to get out of our own heads, and we have to gather that information, think about it ourselves, confirm it with our customers, understand our biases, and then use it to draw our vision of the future. That's my golden nugget.
Michelle, thank you very much for your time. Please stay with me. To the audience, for today, it's everything. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let us know. Feedback is a gift. Therefore, contact me, contact Michelle if you have any question related to this episode or what we are discussing. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share the word of mouth. Subscribe it, share it. Until the next episode, please don't forget, we are not in a B2B or B2C business, we are in a human-to-human environment. Thank you!